You can't test a commercial vehicle without Brabant sausage rolls. After almost 10 years, there is a completely new generation of the Volkswagen Transporter. It is longer and wider than its predecessor. And you can now get it not only with diesel engines, but also with a plug-in hybrid powertrain and a fully electric powertrain. One thing he is not, and that is that it is not very original. It is actually based on a Ford Transporter Custom, and that will be for some Volkswagen fans. Just let that sink in. And in this video, we're going to see what this Volkswagen Transporter is really like. Why? Let's address the elephant in the room right away. Yes, we're driving a Volkswagen today, which is actually a Ford. You can see that from the outside as well. And here too on the inside, you can clearly see that we are on the road with a Ford Transporter Custom. And as I said, this might be a bit of a shock for a lot of Volkswagen fans, especially if you've been driving a Volkswagen Transporter for many, many years. It can take some getting used to that you're actually driving a Ford, but yeah. We need to be realistic. In 2025, it's actually completely normal for car brands to share platforms and entire models with each other. Volkswagen is definitely not the only one doing that. In fact, Volkswagen was actually the only one that wasn't doing that with the Transporter. Think of brands like Mercedes and Renault, which have been collaborating on commercial vehicles for years, but also on passenger cars. Think of all the commercial vehicles from Stellantis, which includes brands such as Citroën, Peugeot, Opel, Citroën, Fiat. They all share the same van too. Think of the Scudo, the Jumpy, the Expert, the Vivaro, the Pros from Toyota. That one is also part of Stellantis. They're all one in the same van. So is it a shame that Volkswagen has also partnered with another car manufacturer to build commercial vehicles? Don't ask me. Moreover, the profit margins on commercial vehicles are simply not that high. And as a manufacturer, you really have to do something if you want to make any money from a commercial vehicle. We also see this with passenger cars. Take Ford, for example. In return, they can borrow the MEB platform from Volkswagen. They're building the Ford Capri Argus on that, and also the Ford Explorer. Those are basically just the Volkswagen ID4, or the Skoda One Jack, for example. And you can see that it's actually completely normal in 2025, not just exchanging parts like engines, but also just platforms and entire models. But okay, let's dive into the details of the Transporter. I'll show you the outside and the interior in just a moment, then I can show you what's different. Compared to the Ford, there are two lengths you can get for the Transporter. I have here the standard base version, which is 5 meters and 5 centimeters long. That makes it about 15 centimeters longer than its predecessor. But you can also get an extended version. That one is 5 meters and 45 centimeters long. You can choose a fairly traditional tailgate at the back. I have it here. Let's see, I need to open it up. Look, here it goes. But you can also just choose from 2 doors that swing out. This is the cargo space of the standard version, so to speak. This one is 2 meters and 70 centimeters deep. If you choose the extended version, then it's 3 meters deep. And the new Transporter is 12 centimeters wider than its predecessor. And that makes it even easier to fit a Euro pallet back here. The towing capacity of the electric version that I have with me today is 2.3 tons. If you choose the diesel version, you can tow up to 2.8 tons. And the last volume is from this base version, 5.8 cubic meters. If you choose the extended version, then it's up to 9 cubic meters if you go for the raised version. You can also get a version that has a higher roof. You can get a higher roof for both this base size and the extended version. And then you're looking at almost 9 cubic meters. We're going to discuss the design for a moment. Here at the front, the Transporter clearly looks like a Volkswagen because the entire front has been designed by Volkswagen. So we get a different hood compared to the Ford Transporter Custom. This hood slopes down a bit. The window section, I believe, is from Ford. The headlights are from Volkswagen. And those headlights also remind you a bit of the headlights you get on the multivan. The front bumper is also from Volkswagen, and you can optionally get a black strip between the headlights. That depends a bit on what version you have. There are a whole lot of different versions, as has always been the case with the Volkswagen Transporter. So you have the base version, but you also have a Panamericana. That's a very robust, almost kind of off-road version with a lot of black plastic around the wheel arches and around the door handle. You have a Combi, not the California, that's based on the multivan. Let's head straight to the back. Let me show you what's different at the back. Just to talk a bit more about that version, there's also a Caravelle, which is the passenger version. That's always electric in the Netherlands, and you have that in two different sizes. You have the normal length and the extended version, and then you can take up to 9 people with you. What's different at the back? Among other things, this plastic strip, we don't get that on the Ford. Here it says Transporter written out, and in this case, e-Transporter. Because we're driving the electric version, the tail lights have their own layout and therefore look different from the Transporter. How can you tell that this is basically a Transporter? Mainly this bend, this angle. You can actually see that this car is based on that Ford. You can get the doors on the sides. And in this case, I also have a side door on that side. And you can actually decide for yourself whether you want that or not. Let's get driving again. The new Volkswagen Transporter is, as always, still available with diesel engines. It's about a 2-liter TDI diesel engine. Good for 110 horsepower or 150 or 170 horsepower. You can get it with a 6-speed manual transmission or an automatic with 8 speeds. For the first time, you can also get a plug-in hybrid. It has a 2.5-liter gasoline engine with 4 cylinders and an electric motor. And together they provide a total of 233 horsepower. It also has a small battery pack. This way you can drive about 60 kilometers fully electric. That plug-in hybrid won't be available in the Netherlands until 2026. But you can already get the fully electric Transporter starting in the spring of 2025. That's the e-Transporter. That's what I'm out and about with today. This one has a 64 kilowatt battery pack in the floor, and with that you can theoretically get about 330 kilometer. In practice, you should expect around 200 to 250 km. It kind of depends on whether it's summer or winter, what you have in the back, or if you're towing something, for example, and also just how heavy your right foot is, how you drive with such a car. A smaller battery pack will be added later. Available, it has a capacity of about 46 kilowatts. By the way, those are all net figures. In gross terms, the packages are always a bit larger, of course. Do you have more capacity, but you can't use the full capacity? There always needs to be a little bit left over. That's actually good for the health of a battery pack. But that smaller battery pack. So we don't really know for sure how far it will go with that. But I suspect around 200 kilometers on paper. But don't hold me to that. Sure. In terms of power, you can also choose with the electric Transporter. The base version has 116 horsepower. That version is actually coming to the Netherlands a bit later, because the electric version that you can get from Spring has a standard 136 horsepower. You can also choose for more power, namely 218 horsepower or even 286 horsepower. Let's also take a look at the interior of the new Transporter. Well, you can definitely tell that the car is basically a Ford Transporter Custom. You come a lot. Ford parts here. What is really original for this car though is the steering wheel. You do get a real Volkswagen steering wheel. On that steering wheel you get a whole bunch of physical buttons that allow you to control a lot of things. I find that nice because on a lot of steering wheels from Volkswagen passenger cars you still get those touch sensitive buttons. But not in this car. That's nice. The standard equipment is a bit more generous than what you had before. On a Transporter at Volkswagen, they also admit that the base equipment was always a bit sparse. And because of that, they've actually spent a bit more money on the interior. So you get 2 digital screens in front of you as standard. I have a 12-inch screen right in front of me, and to my right there's a 13-inch screen. It's very easy to operate. Below, you still have a few touch-sensitive buttons. They're just in the screen. Down here you have a few physical buttons, and there's also a big knob for the volume. Always nice. And as I said, in front of you, you always get a digital instrument cluster. Down here, you get a few USB ports. USB-A, USB-C. You also have a 12-volt socket here, and down here by my seat here. Between the 2 seats, you actually get a power outlet, 230 volts. So you can connect your laptop there, for example. Let's take a look at the storage space. And for that, we're going to do the sausage roll test, because you can't test a company car without Dutch or actually Brabant-style sausage rolls. Down here, you can easily fit 3 sausage rolls, but you also have storage space up here. I think you can fit at least 10 sausage rolls there. Then you have a few compartments where you can store blankets or a sausage roll. One is here. And then over here on the left side, you can fit another one. And right in front of you, you can fit at least 20 sausage rolls. So in terms of storage space, there's not much to complain about here in the new Transporter. You won't be surprised when I tell you that the new Transporter, it drives like the new Transit Custom from Ford, because for maintenance, this is simply a Ford, and that's not a bad thing. By the way, because if there's one thing Ford does really well, it's building a solid chassis. Building chassis, not just for their passenger cars, but also for the commercial vehicles. They really make great chassis, they're nice vans to drive. And that applies to this new Transporter as well. And that actually applies to several modern commercial vehicles. In the past, commercial vehicles were really Spartan. Very simple in terms of setup, and you can feel that when driving. But nowadays, commercial vehicles are just comfortable and stable. They almost feel like a regular passenger car. There is definitely still a difference. You can really notice a difference between the Transporter and, for example, the Volkswagen multivan, which was still developed within Volkswagen. That multivan is actually built on a platform of a passenger car, you could say. It stays even more stable on the road. But this Transporter as well, you can easily drive it daily. You can cover long distances with it. It's comfortable enough, it's stable enough. And especially with this e-Transporter, which of course has a heavy battery in the floor, it feels really mature. We also drove the diesel version today, and you can definitely notice the difference between them. That of course doesn't have a battery pack. It's a bit lighter, especially when it's unloaded. You can't really compare that diesel engine with the electric drive system of this e-Transporter. Personally, I'm a big fan of commercial vehicles with electric drive because you always have instant torque available. And that's great, especially when you're heavily loaded or towing something heavy. This e-Transporter can tow up to 2.3 tons. That's really not bad. But you do have that instant torque available right away, which you obviously don't have in a diesel. A diesel does have quite a bit of torque, but it just can't compete with an electric drive system like that. The downside is obviously the range. You have to take that into account, especially when you load the van completely and are towing something. Then long distances are really just a challenge. But if you stay within the Netherlands, it should almost always work out. Especially if you can recharge a bit during the day, then you can really cover long distances. If you're just staying in the city, then you need a version with a smaller battery. So a smaller battery will be available later. It has a capacity of 46 kWh. The range is not known yet, but if you're only going to drive in Utrecht, Rotterdam, Maastricht or Enschede, then you should really just get the version with the small battery. Because then you won't even drive 100 kilometers in a day. And then you can save quite a bit of money, because that version with the small battery is of course a lot cheaper. Although that price is not known yet, the prices for the diesel are now available. The diesel starts at just under 30,000 euros. Excluding VAT and BPM. And keep that in mind, because the BPM regulation has been adjusted for commercial vehicles since 2025. This e-Transporter starts at 46,990 euros. In short, just under 47,000 euros. That's serious money. On the other hand, if you can just charge the vans at home or at the company, you can save a lot of money again. Of course, because that version will cost with a small battery that's not known yet. That will be announced later, and you'll read about it later as well. AutoRAI.nl. And I'm really curious to hear what you think of this setup. Do you understand a bit why Volkswagen is doing this? Why are they choosing this setup? Or do you actually think, but scandal? And do you think that Volkswagen, as the only manufacturer, should still build its own van? I'd love to hear it in the comments here. Down. Did you like this video? Then definitely give me a thumbs up. And if you want to see more of these videos, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. And I look forward to seeing you in the next video.